People have gone ahead of them. So you see people have gone ahead of them in their approaches and endeavors. If they can just quickly get in contact with the open source, they can get jobs around open source, community media, or being an open source media project. They can also go ahead and establish more communities that drives the adoption of open source and the industry. So I feel like the future of open source in Africa is very important based on the current set of people that we have running conferences, running these workshops. It's an amazing thing. Even up until now, we are president. I can see so many people asking questions. Hey, how do I contribute? This is what I've done so far. How do I do? What are the ways I can even get paid just doing open source? So all those conversations from people coming for the conference is enough information for me to see that we are doing well.
From what I've seen at Usefulness, the organizers have really made a big effort to get more women involved. I believe they gave away 300 places for women. And I tell you, that's really the right approach because we need to make sure that the profile of the conferences are changed now so that it's not just a panel of men speaking.
The event has been organised has made it much easier for me to come to a place I'm unfamiliar with. So I've been really well looked after, and I'm sure other people who come here are really well looked after as well. What do you mean by sustainable? Yeah. What does sustainable mean?
I want to thank everybody. This is a really great evening. What I learned was that Nigeria has a really strong, committed community around sustainability, much more so around kind of practical discussions that you had today than most of the discussions I'm exposed to. So thank you.
That was this video that I was showing you was from the OSCA Fest in Nigeria. I was playing the video as we wait for other members to join us. But I think what would be best is for me to welcome you guys to the group and to give you just a brief introduction about OSCA Africa, OSCA Kampala, and what today's topic is going to be about. So my name is Deborah Anyu Oduman. I am the co-lead for the Open Source Community of Africa, Kampala. And I do a lot of things with development, but I major in technical writing, which is why I thought this workshop would be very useful, especially for those who are interested in applying for the Go season of Docs 2022. So just a brief intro about OSCA Kampala. Let me share my screen. So the Open Source Community of Africa, Kampala, is an open source initiative. It's for open source lovers, creators, enthusiasts from all over Africa. It brings together advocates and experts from within and across Africa with the sole aim of increasing the rate of credible contributions by African software developers, designers, writers involved in technology. So this is our website. The link is, I'm going to paste the link in the chat if you want to know about OSCA Kampala, of OSCA Africa. So it has very many chapters. Let me open this community tab. So we have a community in Kampala. It has various communities in West Africa, especially West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon. There's also another community in Zambia and also another community here in the islands in Mauritius. So the OSCA Kampala community is, I think, must be the most recent community. We just opened in 2021. Yeah, but we've been running for quite some time now. Yeah, so we want to increase awareness about open source and all the opportunities in open source that there are out there, and want to open people's eyes and connect them to the various opportunities. So we hold events such as this, tech writing workshops, developer workshops. We try to, we bring together experts and people who are interested in learning more about various opportunities out there. So welcome to this workshop. Today's workshop is going to be a tech writing workshop. It's going to be led by Ms. Joanna Nanjeche. Ms. Joanna Nanjeche is a Python core developer. She's also the director, vice chair for the Python Software Foundation. She studied aeronautical engineering, so she's a passionate aviator. She's taken part in various open source initiatives, such as Go Season of Docs, Go Season of Code, Outreachy, CalScript. So if you go to your Google and Google Joanna Nanjeche, you will find a ton of stuff about her. Like she has really achieved so much. So we're really, as OSCA Kampala, we are really honored to have her in the call to be discussing this information. And I hope that all of us who are in the call will get the most, will benefit the most out of this. So just before we dive in, I think let me just give you a brief introduction about Google Season of Docs, since this is going to be the main topic of today's presentation. So Google Season of Docs is it's also an open source initiative. It provides support for open source projects to improve their documentation and give professional technical writers an opportunity to gain experience in open source. So the way it happens is that when the cohort opens, Google calls for various organizations to apply. If they want their documentation to be improved by professional technical writers, they'll put in an application, and Google will look through the list of organizations that have applied, and then they'll select a number of organizations who they can provide funds for, and then those organizations will use those funds to pay various technical writers to improve their documentation. So right now, the current stage right now, if you look at this timeline, it's now February 19th. So I believe organizations are still submitting applications. So very soon, they'll be calling for technical writers to start submitting their applications for the various technical writing projects. So we need to stay, as an interested person for this cohort, you need to be ahead of the curve. You need to start looking into which organizations are putting their applications, what projects are out there, which I don't know, you need to assess which organization you want to apply to. So it's very competitive. That is why I thought it would be necessary for us to have this and get enough information from the best person, who is Miss Joanna. So without further ado, let me introduce Miss Joanna Nanjeche to start presenting. I encourage us to be open-minded, and I want this to be an interactive session. If you have any questions, please feel free to put up your hand or ask a question in the chat. Originally this was meant to be a Q&A, but I don't know if I thought in the Q&A would everything be covered. So the format this is going to take is Ms. Joanna will present what she has, and then if you have any questions, forward them to Ms. Joanna or type them in the chat. Thank you so much. So let me stop presenting and invite Ms. Joanna to start presenting. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. For some reason, it's not sharing. I'll try again.
Let me check my settings. Yeah?
Okay, yeah, please do.
Jerry Kakoza, are you on the call? Are you able to resolve this issue?
Yes, I think Joanna can try sharing again. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Jerry.
Yeah, I can. I'm trying to share again, but I think it's not working again. So,
Jerry, could you try sharing your screen and we'll see if it's an issue?
Let me see if I can share my screen, because in the settings it allows everyone to share. Yeah, I'm on my phone, but I think it should be possible for Joanna to start sharing her screen.
okay.
Okay.
In case it doesn't, can I just do the presentation so that we know it's time?
I think
Okay.
Okay. I think what you can try is
You can
maybe,
share the link.
yeah, to the presentation if you have it hosted anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can share the link, I can download it and then I present for you, and then you can.
Can you give me your email?
All right, cool. Let me type it in the chat. There, in the chat.
Have you seen something? It's a Zoho something.
Oh, yes, I've seen it. I've seen it.
I don't know if you have to create a Zoho account or you can just access it.
Let me click the link and find out. Yeah, I have to create an account, but this won't take long. Just give me 1 minute or 30 seconds. Okay, I've got it.
Okay, can you maybe share it and we start the
Okay.
that presentation?
Okay, I'm downloading it.
As if you can present it on the
On the thing
yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Okay. No problem. Let me do that. Let me drag this tab here and then present.
Okay. Okay, cool. So when I'm going to the next slide, I'll keep telling you next slide. I guess that's the format this is going to work.
Okay.
All right. So welcome everyone to my presentation today, and I want to thank Deborah for inviting me to give a talk about the Google Season of Docs and basically what it's about and how to stand out in general. So my talk is more about, I titled it Open Source as a Learning Tool, of course, subheading Cracking Google Season of Docs. Because for me anyway, I started contributing to open source as a learning tool. So that's how I know open source to be. So it's usually very hard for me to separate the aspect of learning and open source. So I always talk about both of them in the same line. So next slide.
Okay.
So a little bit about me. My name is Joanna Nanjeche. Like Deborah said, I am. I do so many things, but I am more proud of my working in open as an open source developer. So I started contributing to open source in 2016 through open source programs like. That time it was Rails Girls Summer of Code, and I also was hired into other programs like Outreachy and many others. And over the years, like I used open source as a learning tool, and over the years, it's open source that has made me what I am today. And so I became a Python core developer, which most of you mostly know as a maintainer for the Python programming language in 2019, after some time contributing to it, since it's also an open source project. But also part of, in my normal job, or 90% of my time, I use it to program. And I program mostly programming languages, implement programming languages themselves. Even on my day job, I basically work on Python, the language. And so, but what I noticed is that sometimes you get to very hard problems in engineering, in programming, whatever you want to call it. And when you reach those hard problems and you solve them, usually you want to keep a record of probably how you've been able to solve those problems. And over the years, I noticed that I actually like writing, and writing about very technical topics. So I don't write fiction. I'm not very interested in writing fiction, but I'm interested in writing about engineering processes, because I was just motivated by, being able to document very difficult problems and how I solve them, so that other people do not have to struggle with the same challenges I faced. So after contributing to one of the projects under Outreachy, actually during the application period, that company didn't even hire me. I got hired by a different company. The project was very interesting to me. I learned different things. So because I was dealing with problems I'd never dealt with before, I got inspired to write my first book. And so in 2017, with the help of Appress is a US publisher, they published my first book on Python 2 and 3 compatibility. And of course, I'd been a technical writer even before I wrote the book. In fact, the book started off as I was writing blog posts, like a couple of blog posts on this very topic, Python 2 and 3 compatibility. So the blog posts became many, and then I met a friend who told me, let's write, you could ask Appress to help you publish the book. So I went through the acquisition process for Appress, and they agreed to publish my book. So I really love writing. That's in my normal job as an engineer. So next slide. Okay, so what is Google Season of Docs? I think Deborah has introduced Google Season of Docs briefly, and so it's basically like open source but for writing documentation. So we have very many open source projects, and one of the ways you can contribute to an open source project is by writing documentation, not necessarily writing code. And so Google Season of Docs is like Google Sum of Code. Google Sum of Code is for students, and most of them write code, though there are some students that actually work on documentation. However, Google Season of Docs is specifically targeted at technical writers or contributors of technical writing, that is documentation for the different open source projects. So the program is changing, has changed a little bit. It used to be exactly like Google's Season of Sum of Code, but now it changed. The hiring process a bit changed, but semantically things are the same. So for a period in a year, they call out for applications from anybody that's interested in contributing in terms of writing to a given open source project. So you show interest, and then you make some initial contributions, and you submit your proposal and application, and then they'll choose through and announce the successful technical writers that will be participating in a given cohort. And so I think around April this year, they will be opening up maybe a call for technical writers. So if I was to define Season of Docs, it's like a summer program, just like Google's Sum of Code, but for just technical writers. Of course, I'm going to talk about more how to stand out, but next slide. So I'll just tell you my motivation that could also be your motivation if you so wish. So among the so many things I hinted about is I like learning new things. So I think my job, or my goal in life, or whatever I'm more interested in life, is more about learning new things every day. And I noticed that over the years that learning never stops. So I am an eternal learner. And my motivation for contributing to open source was basically to keep learning new things, because open source projects are they are very big projects, complex projects. And so there is always opportunity to learn. And so my actual motivation, whether to join Google Season of Docs or Outreach, was always to learn. Next slide. So the reason I want to learn is I'm just curious in general. I'm just curious about how systems work. When I was a student, they used to teach us about protocols. For example, the HTTP protocol. I don't know if most of you know. So the professor used to say, the reason computers are able to talk to each other in the world, because I used to ask myself, whenever I went to a cafe, like in Wandegea, and open my email, then I'll go to another cafe in Ginger. I'll still open my email from there. I'm like, what is this? Is this like witchcraft or something? So I'm always questioning, asking myself questions. What causes these things to happen? I think the same thing happened for my passion for flying. I used to ask myself, why is it that when you throw a small pen, it falls down because of gravity, but we can sustain a whole big aircraft with 200 people in the air? I wanted to know what really causes, what really made us achieve that? What is it? Witchcraft? Is it Illuminati things like most people attribute most complex things to? So I'm generally curious, and I noticed open source kind of cures my curiosity most times. Next slide. So I wanted to be curious and contribute to a meaningful project that would meaningful, complex as well, and cure my curiosity, so that I'm always learning whatever I want to learn. I mean, I always find a way of learning it. All the open source projects have that thing that fulfills that aspect of me wanting to learn. But at the same time, I wanted to be useful. I mean, I wanted to contribute to a project that people find use in everyday life. And I noticed that actually also open source fulfill that aspect, because when you contribute to a project like the Python programming language or the Linux kernel, that means everyone who downloads Python actually uses your code. Anyone that's using the Linux kernel will be using your code. And so it was the simplest way, first of all, of building work experience, because you're working on real world projects. So, I mean, that was a good way of being useful, and it's the easiest way of being useful. So next slide. So, like I said, open source was the most useful thing, but over the time I noticed coding, programming. Software is program. So if we are to create software, we have to do programming to create software. So, but also I was interested in the writing aspect. Like I said, I like simplifying processes for other engineers. So I also still noticed open source. There exists open source, but for writers too. And so that was really my motivation for getting involved in like Google Season of Docs and the likes. Next slide. So let's talk about that was my motivation. I do not know what could be your motivation. Again, for me, it was learning, but also I had a side passion for simplifying developer processes. Your passion could be different. You could look at the Google Season of Docs program and say, for me, I'm interested in the money. It's also a very useful, a very legit reason. Some people just want to survive, and we shouldn't be, judge them for wanting the money. It's a good motivation, provided you deliver the results of the project. For me, it's learning. It says that there are extra benefits that come with the program, like you're paid. For example, you're paid for the tasks you'll be doing. So let's step a little bit back, and I'll talk about the application process. So everyone is eligible by default. Anybody that can write especially in English, though sometimes they support other languages, you're eligible to apply for Google Season of Docs. And so from last year, they changed how applications happen. So we used to apply to Google directly, just like Google Sum of Code, but these days we actually apply to the organization we want to contribute to which we want to contribute to. So those days we would choose an organization, but write a proposal and submit it to Google, then Google would review it and accept the technical writers. Right now, you choose a project, then you apply like to, for example, NumPy, you apply directly to NumPy, then it's NumPy chooses you, and then you work with NumPy. So the application process changed a little bit. And so it's simple. You will choose a project, reach out to the community through the mailing list, ask them about the project and any beginner tasks. So the application process includes you making some initial contributions per se, because so that you get familiar with the product or the software for that organization, but it also gives the organizers a chance to know who to choose per se. But also you can use those contributions you make as sample writing, because when you write the proposal, they ask for maybe technical writer, your previous experience. You could use that as experience. I'll hint a little bit about it. But I think in short, what you have to know is that when they announce the organization, just reach out directly to the organization and ask for some initial tasks, most likely writing tasks, but you can also choose some coding tasks, but you'll be better off starting off by just by contributing to the writing itself. Yeah, so next slide. So after I've talked about the application process, I'll discuss a bit of eligibility. I said everyone qualifies, and the minimum requirements are like you should be able at least to communicate in English. It's remote, so some people from all over the world can participate in Google Season of Docs. But two, they require you to have some writing experience to participate in outreach. I mean, you can apply if you don't have some writing experience, but you won't stand a very high chance. But as I said, writing experience, they're not looking for people who have written books. They're looking for, have you written some blogs before? It could be blogs, your personal blogs for that. Again, somebody's asking, do you need a blog, a personal blog for it? I mean, if you do not have writing that's formal in terms of a book or like research papers, for example, the easiest way to show your writing experience is through writing your own blog and articles on your personal blog, or even contributing articles to third-party blogs. I think I've contributed to third-party blogs like I think is it OpenStack? I think it's called OpenStack, and then Appress, and then so many third-party blogs. So you submit your article and then they accept it. So you can write on your personal blog, but also on third-party blogs. They accept writing. So again, writing experience is really required, at least for all the 2 times, for all that I've participated twice before, and all the organizations were looking for writing experience. And from experience, I noticed, I mean, they say they are accepting even beginners, and I'm not discouraging beginners to apply, you should apply, but when you get the role, make sure as you contribute, because they are looking for like advice. Yeah, they're looking for you to direct them in terms of, most times, directing their documentation efforts. I'll give an example. In my last participation, which is last year, these guys at some point they were asking me, okay, so you are done with your work. Can you tell us what other thing do we need to improve about our documentation? So literally they are looking at you as their savior in terms of directing their documentation even after your project. So sometimes they may not choose a very beginner person, or depending on your skills you can show, because some people, even when they are beginner in skills, they have this, what should I say, this leadership this boldness, they are able to command. But then there is that unique skill they are looking for, a sense of direction per se. So you can be a beginner but demonstrate that aspect of direct people in terms of how their documentation can go forward. Because these open source communities, the truth is, those guys know how to code, but they do not know how to simplify those very technical things to people that probably are not to their level of knowledge. They actually struggle to break down. So these complex concepts have become human nature to them, in that they never think of a person who has never known these complex concepts. I don't know if you've ever heard about that. I don't know. Some people call it the curse of knowledge, but it's true. It's really true. So they are looking for a sense of direction per se. So again, there is the basic minimum, but there are also tips from experience I found from working with some of these organizations. And even during your application period, if you can show that skill, it will be very useful for you. So next slide. So after I've talked about eligibility, I have hinted a little bit about certain aspects of how to stand out. And I think some of you should listen very carefully. So how you approach Google Season of Docs and all these other open source programs like Outreachy, Google Summer of Code, Rails Summer of Code is the same. And usually they will tell you that they are looking for people to get started or to teach open source. And to be honest, and I'm not trying to scare you, I'm just trying to give you real talk. And I think Deborah maybe knows this better than me. So these summer programs are very competitive. Much as they say they are looking for beginner people, they are very competitive because you're competing with people all over the world, people from India that are as fast as I don't know. So you need to, when you're applying for these programs, you need to like be ready, be a bit aggressive in your, what should I say, in your way of standing out. I'll give you an example. When I was applying for Outreachy, first of all, I applied for it twice. The first time, I did not go through. And then the second time, that's when I went through. But when I was applying for Outreachy, it looks like it's a beginner program, but it took me the effort of a full-time job. I'm not scaring anybody, but I'm just trying to give you the weight. It took me the effort of a full-time job. Every day I woke up, make sure I made at least some contribution to the project, or discuss something with my mentor to show that, what should I say, that activeness, so that you're just not passive and looking around, because they are looking for those people who seem interested, who seem very passionate. That passion is very important, but two, you need to do the actual coding during the application period. When I was applying for Outreachy, I think I was in Kenya. I was doing my flight studies then, but I took it like a full-time job. Every day I wrote some code, I discussed something on the mailing list, and literally I was trying to compete with other people so that my pull requests are actually more than the other people that were applying. I mean, it's not, I don't want to look at it like it's a competition with other people. For you, set your goals. Say, I want to have 5 very good pull requests, contributions, and then do these other things. So what I'm trying to say is that it's not a walk in the park. Very many people in the world dread this opportunity. And some people are actually in better places in the world where they've already heard about open source now, but now again, us in Uganda, we are disadvantaged because open source is a very foreign concept. Very few people talk about it, so you usually don't even have hints. So to stand out, make sure you're a bit aggressive in a sense, like take it like your life depends on it. I was telling somebody, if you want to get into Outreachy or get into Google Summer of Code, do it like you really want it. Like I said, it took me the effort of a full-time job for just outreach. So Google Season of Docs, the same energy is required. And I kind of think Google Season of Docs may be a bit more difficult, than outreach. But I don't want to speak so highly of that, because by the time I did Google Season of Docs, I used not to feel some pressure because I already had accomplishments. So I probably am not the best person, but I think it's a bit more competitive than, for example, outreach and Google Summer of Code. So I'm not scaring you. I'm just trying to say you need to put in a lot of effort to make sure you stand out as an applicant. First of all, in the competition, but two, for those that have not written blog and you don't have technical content before, I advise that right now, before they start telling technical writers to show interest, start writing your own, what should I say? Start writing some articles from now. If you start writing some articles between now and April, I think you still have time. So I'm saying start thinking of some articles you can be publishing now, because some little experience in writing is required to stand out as a Google Season of Docs applicant. So prior writing is very important. If you don't have anything before, make sure at least you know from today. So tomorrow, start writing something so that you are able to stand out. So one, the first effort I told you, take it like in your mind. If you take it like, apply like your life depends on it, literally. I'm just trying to say it's not a walk in the park. Then two, work on some prior writing. Then three, when the application period starts, be proactive. It's in line with the competitive aspect. Be proactive. Be active on the mailing list. I advise don't spend a day during the application period you have not talked to the community. Fake a question. At least find some question to ask and just be active. That's how you stand out. Because if I was the one picking technical writers, I'll be like, this person always is trying to learn something every day. So that activity, and then they're seeing this one name all the time in the community. So that makes you really stand out. From my experience, at least I've seen from people who do that, standing out in the application and eventually getting the roles thereafter. So next slide. So I think many things in this process have become second nature to me. Generally, open source, summer programs. Now I actually organize some summer programs myself. So if there is anything, I might have left out a lot of detail because it's been very many years when I've been being in these summer programs. So this is the time maybe you can ask me any questions and I will answer anything about even Google Season of Docs or anything else like outreach or anything else. So feel free to ask me questions about that. So thank you. And I'll give control back to Deborah to moderate the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna, for that very insightful presentation. I have to agree with a lot of things that Joanna said, especially about the being very aggressive you have to. I remember when I was applying for some of these open source initiatives, I was not, I was sleeping for like 3 hours a night because I needed to stand out, I needed to be on top. I needed my name to appear everywhere. I needed people to be sick of me. So that is one of the ways you can stand out in these applications. So we're going to entertain questions. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute your microphone and ask, or type a question in the chat. So the Tracy Nwagaba asked, what if I had taken 6 months without blogging because of being too busy, but she has a blog? Can she still submit those earlier blogs as part of our application or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, because I think since as part of me, since I started my PhD in 2019, I haven't been writing that much. In fact, I've been submitting blogs of 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and maybe my book probably. So if you have articles that are even 6 months old, it's okay. You can submit those because they are looking for something to show to see your writing style. Yeah, like okay, she knows how to write, her flow is fine, and stuff like that. But be careful about those blogs that you are sharing, because they review them. Again, I'm talking from experience of how, like, because when you submit those blogs for your previously written work, they're going to assess them for how you write, because they're saying you're going to replicate the same when you're writing that documentation. I'll tell you a story. One time I applied for some technical writer. There's a third party thing where they pay people over $500, over 300 for when they submit articles. So I wanted to write an article to market my book then. So I submitted for some prayer writing on Medium. I had some Medium articles, and these guys rejected me over previous writing because they found typos in the writing. This is a true story. Like, I'm not faking it or because it has never happened. So I'm relating that story because when you put that previous writing, they are going to assess it. That organization is going to go there, the leaders go read through and say, is this person's writing style fine? Do they over repeat themselves? Is it concise enough? Is their English okay? They're looking out for all those things because they're not looking for someone to really teach for Google Season of Docs. It's not like Outreach or Google Sum of Code. So be careful with the articles you're going to submit, because they may review them. So they need to be in good shape, per se. But you can submit articles that are very old, even 2 years old. Though it would be good if you have some recent articles too. Again, if you have written articles 6 months ago, this you still have time to write some new articles even now before the application period starts if you want to consider applying to Google Season of Docs. So I think two key points is yes, they will allow, but be careful about what the articles you're submitting because they are going to review them. I'm not against scaring you. It's about standing out. There are like 100 people or 1,000 people applying, and they have little money. They want one person, so you have to be very serious about what you're doing if you want to stand out. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Joanne. Whereas Samson Bruno is asking, do guides on building apps with a framework also count as technical writing?
Sorry, can you come again?
Whereas Samson is asking, do guides on building apps with a framework also count as technical writing?
Yes, because I think, Deborah, you know this, but most of the time we are writing guides during Google Season of Docs. We are
Mm,
writing guides about frameworks. We are writing guides about how to use these open source tools. So they act, yeah, that's
yes,
also technical writing.
yes, that is very true. Actually, in my experience, I had come in straight out of Outreachy and I just jumped into Google Season of Docs. So in Outreachy, I was contributing as a technical writer, but not as a developer. So my contributions to my organization in Outreachy were just I was writing for them documentation guides. I was authoring guides for them as well. I was editing their guides. So when I jumped into the Google Season of Docs applications, I used my work in Outreachy as my writing samples in Google Season of Docs. So I told them, this is what I've done in Outreachy. And I also submitted my sample research paper from final year project. I told them I'm able to document technical concepts and simplify them. So I guess they found that impressive, and that's how I got in. So yes, guides, anything that you have that's technically related, I think could work. Yeah. And then Kato Arnold is asking, are your blogs are let me see this. Are the blogs mainly about problems you have solved? Should the blogs be mainly about problems you have solved? Or I think he's asking about yours. Are your blogs mainly about the problems you have solved?
Um, so I would say mostly yes, because when I look at my what inspired me to write every blog I've written before, it was because of a problem. So most of the time, I'm a programmer. I'm not like a technical writer every day. So the passion for technical writing, I just use writing to just communicate things that I find as being hard. So I found myself just writing about problems. So for me, that's my writing style. But there are people who just explore tools and write about them. But for my personal writing, I find myself just writing about engineering problems and trying to simplify them. Yeah.
Okay. So Kakinda Kayongo Android is saying, when it comes to documentation, there should be so good case practices out there. Do you have any that you can share? For example, I liked how Ethereum documentation was written.
Oh, okay. This question can be approached in two. There are so many, and usually I advise people to look at, or professionally, if we are to give a very technical answer. If you went to like O'Reilly and Appress, those publishing companies, they have blogs also. That's a very good place to go, and they blog about write about very technical topics. So what happens with like companies like Appress and O'Reilly, on their blogs, they are very professional in that by the time they release an article, they make sure it ticks all the writing practices. Yeah, and if it's technical, you get two. You get two. It acts as a template for both cases, just writing skills, but also how to really write a technical document. So I would say professionally, go to a press. But personally, I have like two examples of my best documentation. If you look at the Kubernetes, if you go to the Kubernetes documentation, in my view, that's my view. They have very good. Their writing style is very good, and then I think it's called Free Code Camp. I don't know, Free Code Camp or whatever it is now. I've lost track so if you're looking for very technical documentation and how they, like, you want to see templates of how they write guides, installation guides, how to write the different aspects. For me, the Kubernetes website, but also is the best. And for general tutorials, FreeCodeCamp has a collection. People document tutorials of different things. So for me, for tutorials, FreeCodeCamp, and then for very basic examples of how to document different aspects of software, be it components, be it installation guides. I like the style for Kubernetes. So again, that's my preference. But again, for professional, go to sites like Appress. For general, like open source or general examples of how to write good articles, technically go to Kubernetes or FreeCodeCamp for tutorials in general. Yeah. But there are many other places that probably Deborah will share, or some other people have shared online as well.
For me, I was also quite new to technical writing last year. So my best I used to learn, I like learning from people, because when I read a lot of documentation, sometimes I get overwhelmed. So I used to read blogs of other people and their experience in technical writing. So for example, this blog was written by Edith Young, and I think she's the assistant technical lead for OSCA. She wrote about the guide open source project. So she basically gives you like a step by step, like the basics of what you need to know about technical writing, especially if you're a first timer. Yeah, so there are a bunch of articles like this that we share in our WhatsApp group if you're interested. Yeah, and I think one thing I also wanted to bring to your attention is, if you want to know how, like, how documentation is done in Google season of docs, you can guys go to this guy's website and go to previous seasons. So you look at previous submissions by past organizations and past technical writers. So there's 2019, there's 2020, there's 2021. Just go here to successful technical writing projects, and then you will look at the projects that that were done last year and the organizations that participated. So you will find here Avis, Curious Reader, this was my organization. So if you look at this, you'll see my name in there somewhere. You'll find Metanoma, you'll find Opia. So you get an understanding of what organizations want in a technical writer, what they expect, and how you can frame your application to look better than this or even similar. So this is also part of the research that you can conduct before you submit your application. Yeah. So who has any other questions? Feel free to unmute and ask the question.
Yes, morning.
Morning, Lincoln.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to, thank everyone for organizing. Deborah, Joanna. Well, I'd put a question in the chat, but maybe you didn't see it, Deborah. But let me just ask it. Well, in most cases, becoming a writer, you're more of an author. Yeah. So, and I'm asking, do you hold any copyright regarding this, or it's a company that you're writing to, or that holds the copyright stuff? Because I don't know. So that's what I'm asking.
Okay. So the thing about Google Season of Docs is you're going to be writing for open source projects, right? You're right. Your documentation is going to be to open source projects. Yeah. So the same. So every open source project has what they call a license. I think for you, what you call copyright is open source projects have an open access. I don't know, different licenses like MIT, whatever. So your writing is governed by that license of that particular organization. But as you know, open source projects, the very definition of open source allows for other people to get your code or your documentation, even make edits to it and use it as they want.
Okay.
So you have to know that the copyrights are not as restrictive in open source software. So read carefully the licenses for the organizations you're contributing to and see if they align with your goals. Yeah, so again, your writing will be any rules around your writing will be governed by the license of a given open source organization. I've not seen an organization that has different licenses for the code and the documentation. Usually it's the same license that governs both. But if you have any concerns about ownership of your writing, you should talk to the organization about it. But what you have to know, if you're applying to an open source project and you're contributing to an open source project, just know the laws of open source apply. It means anyone can get your documentation, edit it, and use it in any way they want. Yeah, but you have credit for it. You'll be author. Usually, you are the author. You have some sort of ownership to that aspect of documentation you wrote. I mean, in terms of attribution, they will say you are the author. Different projects have different ways of doing it. And some people actually end up being maintainers of documentation. But yeah, so governed by that license, but you have to know it's open source, so anyone can use your documentation as they so wish.
All right. Then I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I applied to Outreach and I found out that there are restrictions, like someone who has been to Google Sum of Codes not eligible to apply again. So I'm asking, does this apply to Google Season of Docs or?
So Google Season of Docs is different. Like I told you, for me, I've been in everywhere almost. Like everywhere. Over the code things, over the work. Google Season of Docs, I've done 2 years and I'm going to do this year because I like writing. So just take me as an example, really. They won't refuse you, to be honest, whether you've worked where. There's no restrictions for Google Season of Docs. You can You can even participate as many times as you want, even in the same Google season of docs. Because I'm going to participate this year and it will be my third year. Because I want. I mean, every summer I try to get an open source project. Yeah. So do as many times as you want, whichever background you have, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. You can apply as many times as you want. Personally, I will not be participating this year because the organization that I wrote for in Google Student of Docs last year decided to retain me and retain me as their in-house technical writer. So you find that these opportunities they come with blessings. Yeah, if they really appreciate what you have done, they'll be like, just come and work for us or something. Like Google Student of Docs will end. Now they'll put you on their personal payroll. They'll now start paying you out of the Google Student of Docs budget. So whatever you do, put 100%. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So whereas Samson Bruno is asking, does it require to have a CV or resume for a technical writer when applying?
I would say yes and no. But like I said, your CV, you don't, so they say they need some experience in technical writing. For me, I'm an engineer. Like I don't even have any role where I'm a technical writer for a given company, but I was hired based off some of my even informal writing per se. So it's yes and no. If you have been having roles of technical writing before, you'll stand a higher chance. But also, if you have never held a role as a technical writer before, you have a chance. You still have a chance because you can use your writing, your just some sample blogs that may have not been written in a really professional role or official role as a writer, and you'll still be what should I say, accepted. I've even seen students being accepted into Google season of docs just based off some blogs they wrote before. So you submit a CV, but it doesn't have to have like roles of professional technical writing before, but you should have some experience in writing, either informal or professional. Yeah.
Okay, I agree. And to add on to that, well, if you look at the organization requirements, when you're applying, they'll have the project will document what they need from the technical writer. So they'll say to apply for this project, we need you to submit this, that. Some of them will be like submit samples of the writing you have done before. So you might have to submit links to a blog or PDFs or something like that. Or some of them might even ask for your CV. So if they ask for the CV, submit your CV. But of course, don't just submit the CV that you have. Tailor it to suit the needs of the project. So let's say it's NumPy. Probably they'll want to look at some Python experience that you have done, some Python projects that you have done, and also a little bit of writing that you have done before. So tailor your CV to suit the project needs. So it really depends on the requirements of the project that you're applying to.
Yeah, but I think Deborah's brought up a good point. You guys apply like you need the job. Don't just throw on some CV for like 2001 without even looking twice on it. Like try to put yourself in line with the opportunity. You get it? I think that's what Deborah is trying to say. And
Yeah, exactly.
read the what says eligibility, and try to make sure your CV like comes as close. Don't lie, but make sure you're as close as you can be.
Yes, by Joanna talking about that, like the CV issue, it really brings a lot of questions because literally, when you're applying, and these normal circumstances, when you're applying maybe for job post, those guys really, their criteria, they want you to maybe to have attained all in form of education, what the technical skills, what. So what could be, all right, are there some technical aspects that maybe you should include? Because I think when you're talking about like being a writer, sometimes for me, I think it's inborn. There are people who are so good at writing, they can express themselves fully in the context of what they're talking about. So with this being a documentation maybe criteria, do they look at other technical aspects that maybe this guy maybe has been a developer for all this, holding this experience of years, what do they?
I think because you see, when because we are documenting technical things, I would say probably your engineering experience can add some points to you. But at the end of the day, what they are looking for is whether you're you're suitable, more suited for the role you are going to have, right? And you need to demonstrate it practically. So for them, what they are looking, they can teach you about their product, right? The technical aspects of the product, they are going to teach you because they expect that you don't know about it. But there are things they don't want to teach you. The writing aspect, they don't want to teach you. They want to teach you technical aspects, not the writing. You should come with some basic brushed up skills on writing, like the flow. I mean, at least you should have articles before to show that you know how to write an article well, at least to some degree well. So your technical skills are important, and I'm not saying they are useless, but they are those they can teach you. They focus more on, we do not want to spend 2 weeks teaching them about how to write. That one they don't want to really teach too much. But I'm saying technical skills are also important, but they are mostly judging you on, can you write? Will you be able to write? That's what they are assessing. I hope I've answered that question.
Yeah, then so some other questions. So usually I told you earlier that I applied for APTA and I was really reading through their guidelines, whatever. So these guys are like per week you should at least be capable of offering 30 hours per week. That's 6 hours for 5 days, yeah. So and technically, and the normal maybe system that we know, maybe when you're working on a project, you have to at least have you do have to have at least, there could be at every maybe close of the day you hold a meeting maybe with the person, maybe it could be the person, could be the scrum master, anything of that kind, who's anyone holding such a position. Now, on this point, I'm asking, how is it at your own convenience to sit down, right? Then, if you feel that what you have put down is proper, after maybe going through what you have written several times, that you can submit, or you have to hold maybe meetings like every day, we talk, discuss this and this. So just what I'm asking.
So maybe Deborah will expound later, but usually when they accept you as a Google Season of Docs technical writer, you'll have some initial communication with whatever they call mentors, right?
Yeah.
Come up with a schedule of meetings. So for all the programs I've participated in, usually you'll have like a meeting once every week to give an update on what you're working on, right? And what you're doing. But open source community, usually you'll have a community where you can post different questions you have or ideas about your writing, and you want feedback from the community. So you'll have meetings, but you also have a community where you can ask questions. But you'll have a schedule with your mentor that will determine when you meet and when you shouldn't meet. And the milestones you'll achieve in the project, those you agree with your mentor. So you say, this is the task we are working on first, and it should get done in 2 weeks. Those you'll agree with your mentor. And then you come up with your meetings, but the community is always there for any feedback, if you need any feedback. And I advise, this is just a general tip. If you're working with an open source community, make sure that you communicate before you start working on a task. Like, for example, if you've decided, I'm going to work on the user guide, either ask your mentor or post it in the community and be like, is this a useful thing to start working on, to gauge their input? Because you may work on something and it's not, they find it useless. So communication is very key to the community, but mostly to your mentors as well during the application or during the actual period. I hope that answers your question as well.
Very well.
So has Deborah left the call or something?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, I think Deborah has left, but yeah, I don't know if there are any other questions. Let me check in the chat. Is there a book? Can you
That's
hear
the
me?
question I wanted to ask.
Yeah. Is there a book I can read to learn the basics of technical writing? That's a question from Arnold.
Okay. Personally, I've not read a book on technical writing, but I think there are there, so I cannot recommend a book on technical writing. But I presume people have written so many books. But the first step you can start is by reading some blogs of previous technical writers. An example is DD Codes, the blog that Deborah just showed us. People have written about how to do technical writing, especially past participants. Those past participants of Google Season of Docs, they have written articles about how to do technical writing. So that could be your best bet. Offhand, I don't know any book, and I've not read any book about technical writing, but I think they are there. Maybe Deborah knows. For me, I don't know. Deborah, have you read any book about technical writing, or do you have any book about technical writing?
Personally, I haven't come across a book, but I've come across blogs. I know blogs, so
Yeah.
And I think for easy ingestion of information, I think blogs are more summarized as compared to an entire book. But I'm sure if you look for books, they are there. Yeah. So yeah, just is asking. I had talked about a WhatsApp group. Yes, we have a WhatsApp group for OSCA technical writers. Let me just get the link and share. So if you're interested in Joan is part of the group. So if you're interested in, like, if a question comes up, just ask in the group, and then one of us will answer your questions. Yeah. Let me share the link. I've shared the link in the chat of the call. Yeah. Yeah, so one thing I also wanted to mention is different organizations use different documentation tools. So for example, you find that some organizations use Google Docs, some organizations use I don't know, they have very different platforms. Some platforms are based on Python, some platforms are based on JavaScript. And for some organizations, you need to be able to understand you need to know how to use Git, because the way their documentation is structured is you're writing, yeah, but their documentation platform is very technical. Yeah. For example, like Docusaurus, you need to clone their repository, open it in VS Code, write, push it like to GitHub. That is how I was documenting for Mix. It was very technical. But compared to my experience with Curious Learning, where it was just Google Docs, or we're just using Google Docs the entire time. So if you're researching on these organizations, try to understand which documentation platform they use, because you might find that you might be able to write, yes, but when it comes to the tools that they are using, it fails you. Like, so do some research on the tools that they use, and different organizations use different tools. You'll find like even tools you've never seen before. So try to understand the language, the tool that they're using. So in the chat, there is Jekyll, Markdown. Yeah, for Mix, they were using restructured text, which is it's a bit technical, yeah. Atlassian Confluence, yeah. So do some research on that as well. Yeah. So what else can I say about that? So are there any more questions from people in the group? So while we are at it, let me just, in case you need to join our community, this is our community. Let me paste the link in the group. OSCAKampala.github.io. We are on WhatsApp, we're on Telegram, we are on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Discord. We have a server on Discord whereby anybody because it's an OSCA server, so we have a channel of OSCA Kampala. In that server, you'll find OSCA Lagos, OSCA Ghana, like there are so many OSCA chapters. So you'll be able to get in touch with various members all over OSCA. Yeah, that is on our Discord server. We have a WhatsApp group for technical writers, OSCA Kampala. We have a group for OSCA, just the general group with all developers. We have a Twitter channel. Sometimes we hold Twitter spaces whereby we discuss different topics like this. Feel free to join. I've put the link in the group. We also have members who participate in various open source projects. So if you're interested in taking part in these open source projects, please join the group and get in touch with those members. Somebody's saying, where is saying he needs a mentor, either Debbie or Nanjeche. That's fine, that's okay. I think first step is first join our WhatsApp group, and then you can inbox either me or Joanne and see what you need, and then we can guide you accordingly. So I think we have probably come to the end of the call. I believe we've covered all bases regarding Go season of docs and technical writing. Even me, there are some things I didn't know, I've just learned from Joanna. This has been very helpful. I hope it's been helpful all of you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Joanne, so much for your time and your attention to this call. We appreciate it. And we'll see you soon. Looking forward to seeing you guys in the OSCA social media platforms. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. Bye for now.
All right.
All right, thank you.
That's very
All right.
Thanks everyone who joined in. And
Thank you.
let's keep in touch in the chat if you are in the various communication channels, and keep engaged.
All right.
Meanwhile, next Saturday we are having PyClub. Guys, don't forget.
Okay.
Yeah.
But send us is it physical or virtual?
It will be a physical event, and we shall be holding it at Tunga Hub from 2 to 4. So I think Tobias will communicate. He has communicated. I think if you guys are in the Telegram group or WhatsApp or PyClub, even OSCA, yeah, those who are in already know. So hope seeing you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Lincoln.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you guys. I'm also going to leave. And yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.